Well, hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Jiu-Jitsu 2000 here today. I'm back. I hope you guys are doing wonderful out there. I've got an interesting video for you today. We're going to talk about Alone Grizzly Mountain Season 8, and in today's episode, we're going to be recapping Episode 5. The name of this episode is The Buck. So I got my notes here. I want to give a couple quick, simple apologies. One for this video being late. I just got back in town from out of state last night. And the second one, hopefully the camera doesn't do that weird zooming thing that it did in the last episode. I didn't even realize the camera was doing that until I was editing the video. And I couldn't reshoot because I was heading out of state. So hopefully you guys kind of understand what that was about. I didn't mean to do that on purpose. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to get right into this. This was a very good episode. We're going to start by the quote on the screen, and it says, "Only by going alone in silence, without baggage, can one truly get into the heart of the wilderness." Interesting quote by John Muir. And for some of you that don't understand who John Muir was, he was basically the founder of the national parks. So very, very interesting quote there. So what they did on this episode of the show is they kind of put a little twist on it by going back a couple of days. So the last episode we saw Jordan Tapp on day 19, I think it was. Well, in this episode, they went back to day 17. They started about 7 o'clock, a little after 7 in the morning with Clay. And he said he had a weird dream that he was sitting down with Joe Rogan, and I think he said Howard Stern, that they were having like a meeting or something. And Howard Stern invited him and his boys to go over. So very interesting dream that he had there. He decided that to help his fishing efforts that he would make a landing net, so when he catches a fish he can scoop the fish up instead of trying to bring it all the way to shore. So I thought that was very smart. 9:50 in the morning he finishes the net, and it looks fantastic. He did a very, very good job on this net. And then he goes fishing. He wants to test the net out. But about 11:45 he doesn't have any fish, didn't catch nothing, and he needs meat. And he said something that rang a bell, something very, very wise and very, I guess I could use the word attention to, or awareness of himself. He said, "I'm not going to outstarve anyone out here," which is so smart. He's aware of the fact that he needs to procure food. Very cool. So we're moving forward. Again, we're on day 17. They backed it up a little bit after 11, almost noon. We're talking about Michelle, and she is finding some freshwater snails, and she decides to cook those up in an effort to eat, you know. And during that shot, I noticed a couple things. She made a very nice wooden spoon that she was using. And I noticed in this episode that some of the participants were using Dutch ovens, and she was one of them, had a Dutch oven. And she decides that she's going to build a fish trap. And this time she builds a fish trap and she puts it out in a really good spot. So I thought that was cool. Now we're moving forward. It's about 3 o'clock. We're talking about Matt. And he goes fishing. It's 43 degrees outside. And he gets the fish, the hook snagged. So he's got a snag, and he does something very smart. He's not just going to yank on the line and risk breaking it and losing the hook, which you got to understand out there, they don't have an unlimited supply of hooks. They have a certain amount of hooks that they're allowed to bring. So he decides to go out into the water and get his hook or unsnag. So that was very interesting, very smart on his part to salvage something that he brought with him, which was that fish hook. Very valuable item out there. So he goes in the water looks cold, he's about waist deep in this water. Very, very interesting. And he gets in there and he gets the hook uncaught and everything's cool. He gets out of the water and very good. So he says that today was his wife's birthday and he actually catches a fish. It's a small fish, but and he's saying, you know, this is a tiny fish, but he's also very grateful, very thankful. He decides to make fish soup. He eats the soup and everything, and he's still hungry. Okay, so it is what it is. Very interesting. And he decides that he's going to meditate today. He's very, very much missing his wife. So we're moving forward. Day 18, about 8:30 in the morning. We're talking about Biko. And he's showing his mountain forged nail knife. And he tries the knife out. And he's batoning a piece of wood, small piece of wood. I noticed that he has a Dutch oven also. And he's going to make a fish basket today. Very cool. So he says, when this is all said and done, I'll be sexy. I'm not going to be the fattest guy out here anymore. I'm going to be looking good and lean. Very interested. I'm really enjoying his character. I really am. He's got a good mind and a good personality. And he's talking about, I wonder if anybody tapped out yet. You know, again, we're on day 18 because they went back. So he's kind of wondering about that. And he sees a couple bears down a little bit by the shore from where he's at. So he uses the air horn. Very smart. And he makes a comment. He says, the bears out here are bigger than what I thought. Bigger than what I expected. And then he also makes a comment. He says, I've never been around bears before. This is a first thing for me. This is my maiden voyage, I guess you could say, of being around bears. So very interesting that he's out there without having any experience being around bears. Very cool. Because some people, I think, that would go out and put themselves in a situation like that might allow that new fear to disarm them. And Biko's not showing any signs of that. He's showing good mental toughness out there, putting himself in the uncomfortable, you know, something that he's not used to. And I give him mad respect for that. Big props to Biko for doing that. So Biko decides he's going to go and put his fish trap in the water. And now we're moving forward. It's day 19. It's about 8:40 in the morning. Talking about Michelle. She decides that she's going to make a cooking shelter. So a separate location to do all her cooking so that predators will be drawn away from her shelter. Very, very, very smart. That's something I would have done if I was out there. She said she's feeling weak and needs some food, and she makes a confession that she's eating her mucus. And she talks about salt. She doesn't have any salt intake out there. And then she makes a comment about being a school teacher telling all the kids don't pick your nose and eat that, you know, and then she's like, I'm out here doing that. I'm doing anything I can to survive out here. You know, very interesting. She's eating wild edibles, but those are low fat, low calorie, she says, and for her, fishing is the only thing that will sustain me, she says. And she says, I have a tiny, wiry body. So she goes to check on the fish trap. Very interesting here. And it's not even in the water. It's out in the open, sitting on top of a rock or something like that. And she's trying to figure it out. And she's kind of frustrated it's kind of messing with her head a little bit. And she, not only is the fish trap out of the water and it's sitting on a rock, but the top of it is off. It's open. Very interesting. Something definitely pulled the fish trap out of the water, opened it, and maybe there was something inside or not. I don't know. Very, very interesting. So we're moving forward. Day 20. 8 people left now at this point. 8 o'clock in the morning. Talking about Nate, and he's got this big mustache. And he's talking about grooming a little bit, and he kind of twists some little handlebars. Very cool footage there. He's talking about the fact that he had 2 spinal surgeries in his life, and that laying on the ground has kind of been taking a toll on his body a little bit, and his sleep, stuff like that. So he decides that he's going to make a box hammock. Very smart. Apparently he found some rope on the shore on day 3. He found some rope out there, so he's going to use that to make this box hammock. Very smart. And he builds a square, rectangle type box frame, and he lashes some cordage on there. Looks fantastic. He likes it. He's happy. He says no more waking up to numb legs and hip. So very cool. So we're moving forward. A little after 1 o'clock, day 28 people left, talking about Matt again. He climbs up a tree. He's like 40 feet up in this tree. Gets some very, very cool footage of things in his area. Very nice view of the lake. And he's thinking about his family today. And he's deciding that he wants to change his mental state. He's thinking about his family too much. And he says, I need to get into survival mode. So he's motivated to do great things, So he's out getting some grass for his bedding and insulation factor of his shelter. He wants more padding and more insulation. And he's out there digging this grass up, and he digs right into a hornet's nest or a bunch of hornets and yellow jackets flying at him. And I'm not laughing at him, but I've been in situations like that. That's why I think it's kind of comical. Not comical against Matt, but comical of the situation, because I've experienced things like that before. I did my 10-day survival challenge video, and I got bit by a bee on day 9. Stuff like that. So I'm kind of getting a kick out of it, because again, I've been there and done that. Very interesting. Moving forward, it's about 9 o'clock at night, still day 20, still talking about Matt. And he says, it's hard when you fell on television. And then he starts talking a little bit about how people, the armchair quarterbacks and people watching the show are out there eating food, and they're very judgmental of the cast out there. And all I can say to Matt out there is, I've loved your experience, and the people that are sitting at home, you hit the nail on the head when you said they're not out there doing it. And I agree with you 1,000% on that. So moving forward, day 21, 7:51 in the morning, we're talking about Michelle again. She's got her teeth, and she's looking at the camera, and she's noticing that her teeth are discolored. She said the fish trap is discouraging, so she gets the bow out, and she's going to try to find a grouse. She's noticed a grouse movement in activity in her area. And she's getting real thin, and she's aware of this, and it's scaring her, I think. Not that she's scared, but it's an awareness. She's onto it that she's losing weight, and it's a frustration, I think. She's mentally tough, though, but struggling physically, and I think that was her words, actually, that she said that. There's a shot, the camera's on a tripod, and she's sitting in her chair that she built. She's got her bow in her hand, and she's kind of glazing the area, gazing around. She sees a grouse, so she gets up out of the chair and starts very slowly moving in that direction of the grouse. And she doesn't get a shot, nothing like that I am aware of. And she said she's not feeling good. She's got some chest pains. And then she taps out. She said that she made a moral decision, and now she gets to go home to her husband and his brother, who had Down syndrome. Her dream of winning this show was, and what she would do with the money, was to bring her husband's brother in to live with them. But now she tapped, so she gets to go home to her, like I said, her husband and his brother, Mike. She took herself to a point where things could have gotten really bad. And this next point that she said was very smart. She said, having a healthy body is one of the greatest gifts that you can have in life. Now, I got to admit, when it comes to Michelle, in my prediction, I was wrong. I thought that she was going to outlast all the other women. Boy, was I wrong. She was the first one to tap of the women. Wow, crazy. That's why I love this show, because they shake things up so much. You can make these predictions and things, and sometimes you're dead right, and sometimes, like in my case here with Michelle, I was dead wrong. But much respect to Michelle. She gave us a great story out there. I really enjoyed watching her, and I think she's amazing. So moving forward, day 21, 3 o'clock, we've got 7 people left now. Talking about Clay, he decides he's going to go bow hunting or scouting. And he said it's so frustrating when you're not catching fish. And he likes to, as he describes, still hunt. He said these are slow movements. You stop often, you look, you listen, you have total awareness, complete situational awareness of what's around you. You're being present in the moment. You're calm. And then he's kind of scoping around and he sees some fresh deer sign. He sees some droppings, very fresh. He decides at that moment that he's going to go back to base camp, back to his camp, and he's going to think about all this. And he's in a better place, I think, mentally, knowing that there's some deer activity that's fresh close by. And he said something to the effect that he wasn't quite sure where he was, so he wanted to go back to camp, and that way he knows exactly where to go, I think. So we're moving forward. It's about 6 o'clock. And again, Clay, he's happy about seeing the deer sign. He thinks that he's got a chance to put a deer down. And I agree. Clay, I think, I really do believe he's going to get a deer on this show. I do. So moving forward, day 22, 8 o'clock in the morning, we're talking about Matt. He says he's feeling run down today. He needs food. He says he's not aware. He's not in it. He's not in tune with the environment around him. He's got too many things on his mind. I think he's stressing a little bit. So he's out there fishing, and he decides to sing the song that for his wife of 13 years. So he's out there singing while he's fishing, and I'm not knocking him, but I'm thinking, the sound of the singing, even though it's beautiful, might be not having much success with fish while you're singing. But he's out there doing his thing. And so, and he talks about the fact that he has his wife to lean on, and they lean on each other. And that's an important deal. For 13 years, he's had this partner and that he can lean on, and mutual, she leans on him, that's important. And now he's finding himself out there alone without that support. It's kind of reminiscent of Jordan in a way, because that's what they portray Jordan as tapping, that he had missed his family. So he's singing while fishing, and then the next thing you know, Matt is tapping. And he says, I wasn't happy being alone, and I didn't want to fight it. So, again, he was honest with himself, honest with the people, and you got to give respect to Matt. He said, I miss my friends, my family, my life, and family's more important to me than anything. And you can't fault a guy for that. So much respect to Matt for showing us his story as well. So now we've had 2 tap outs in this episode. We've had Michelle and now Matt. Moving forward, day 22, it's a little after 11 o'clock in the morning. We have 6 people left. Think about that, 6. A lot of people tap now. So Clay, he hasn't eaten meat in 14 days. So he said, there's only 2 or 3 deer that I know of out here. And that's interesting. So he goes out and he sees some fresh sign, and I think he's close. I think he's very close. He picks up a piece of, droppings, and he kind of smashes it. It's very moist. So that's very, very recent. Very interesting. He sees a buck while he's filming, and he has a very intense moment. And it's so crazy, because he's got a camera behind him. He's operating 2 cameras at the time that he sees this buck. He's got one behind him on a tripod, and he's got the other one kind of doing the selfie thing. And he locks eyes. He sees this buck deer, and he freezes, and he's like, don't spook, don't spook, don't spook. And he's he completely changes into hunter mode. Very, very interesting shot right there of him. And I can't believe that he was able to do that with 2 cameras rolling. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Oh my gosh, very intense. The buck decides to move behind a tree, and as soon as the buck moves behind the tree, Clay responds like a ninja, man. He puts that camera down, he pulls up his bow, knocks an arrow, and takes a shot. And then, of course, the show goes to commercial, and that's really the end of the episode, because after that, the show comes back, and it has the interview with Nikki talking to Michelle, and Michelle's just kind of talking about, you know, her body and how her mind was strong, but her physical was down. So it was a very, very interesting conversation that Nikki had with Michelle. Not really too much to comment on that, but it was very interesting. You know, basically the fact that her mind was tough, but her physical was breaking down. And it leaves us thinking about what are we going to see on the next episode. I really believe that we're going to see a deer. I think Clay got something. And then it gives us a shot of Biko, and he's talking about his personal rules. Rule number 1, do not hit the tap button. Wow. Show is getting interesting. And like I have always said, it's around this point where things start shaking up and it gets really good. So I can't wait for next week's episode. This was a great one. Hope you enjoyed this commentary. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you guys have a great 4th of July. I love you all. And we'll see you next week. Oh, it's getting good. Bye for now. Have a great day, everybody.